Well, it is morning. Those are some photons that are coming in through the window. What light through yonder window breaks? Well, that's what it is. So what am I going to do here today? If you could see the rest of my house, you would think, why aren't I just working on cleaning up? But this is more fun talking to you. This doesn't belong in that drawer. I knew that this was missing from the drawer that it should be in. This is a really cool stub nib, and let's take off the crud at the end of it. You see that? Sort of sharp that is. If I remember correctly, it's also very sharp on the side. And it is very rigid. Rigid. That's what that says. Rigid. Let's try that again. I should learn how to actually do some of this lettering that Stubbs used, Chancery script and Old English and all that kind of stuff, because it's beautiful. But it just takes so long not to learn it. It takes long to write a letter. I can write an entire word in cursive badly in the time it takes me to do one letter badly in Old English. But it's pretty cool. I like this nib. That's a keeper. Put it in the drawer that it's supposed to be in, which I think is that one. What does this one do? Oh, unscrews, that's what it does. Why is this in that drawer? Oh, extra fine. It is an extra fine. Is this an accountant nib, Pierre Gustafson? Let's take a look. Does this say accountant on it? It does not say. Oh, it does. Account. See, right between Ideal and 14K. Come on. It's very difficult getting the camera on your devices to focus. So what I do is I put a piece of paper next to on the same plane, and it can focus on the paper. It's hard when it focuses on the metal because the metal reflects so much. But you see that it does say account. How close can I get on this thing? That tiny little nib. And with any nib made by even a reputable company like Waterman, no two accountant nibs are going to be alike. One will be just a little tiny bit finer, and one will be just a little tiny bit more flexible. But they belong to the same family of fine, firm nibs. And they're a lot of fun. If you've never tried one, go to a pen show and try one. But do not try one where the pen dealer says, oh, I smoothed this. I polished the nib, meaning I took a perfectly good nib and put it on emery paper and ruined it for you. That's what they, under oath, that's what they should be saying. And yes, a fine nibbed pen will, by its nature, be a little scratchy, because that one little molecule, if that's the right word, of iridium. No, it's an atom, one little atom of iridium that's shared. Here's a close-up of the nib. Here's the atom of iridium. So here's, its nucleus made of whatever, and here's all the electrons going around it. And one atom is split. They split the atom to make this pen for you. And of course it's going to be sharp. And that's part of the fun. That helps you when you're calculating how many dollars you're in debt. You need to fill in lots of little numbers in the little tiny space on a ledger page. And this pen will do that. So let's see, does this one say account? It's another Waterman. I see the O of account. Yep, ACC. Again, between the ideal and the 14K. And there you see the actual atom of iridium. No, of course, there's millions of atoms of iridium on the end of this thing, but when anyone, quote, smooths a pen, this one doesn't ever screw tight because the threads are gone, which often happens on these pens. So that's why it's in the drawer at the desk. Let's see what else I have. I think I just looked at that one. The Schaefer pen is a favorite of mine to do fine lettering with, fine line work with, because it's really prickly fine. It's way finer than the one I just used. And I think this one, I did a test. I don't have a measuring device that can tell me how fat that line that I just made is. So what I do is I take my ruler. I have a million rulers. I have a collection of rulers in my house as well, but where do I have one that I can actually use? Let's pretend I have a ruler in my hand. I do. I know where it is. It's right here. And I make a 1-inch long line, and then I do this. Make sure there's ink enough in it, and then I go like that. And I draw a bunch of lines that are distinct lines. Okay. Move this way. So there's a line and there's a space between it and the next line. And sometimes I usually have to do it very quickly. But sometimes I figure out a way to gauge my hand. So I move my hand just slightly. I'm just sort of rotating it, like this as I go make these things. Anyway, the finest pen I had, within 1 inch, I made 125 separate lines with a space between them. Let's imagine the line and the space were equal. So there's 250 lines in an inch. So it's 1/250th of an inch is how wide or how thin, how thin that line is. So you do that math. You get your pen out, your finest pen, and try to do as many lines, vertical lines, within an inch. Now, I suppose if I do this with this pen, and then pick that spot right there, and have that be measured by I can go down to MIT and have them get out their electron microscope and see how fine that is. But this is pretty fine. You're not going to find any fountain pen that's made today that's as fine as this thing. And when you're at a pen show, don't ignore those Schaefers, as almost everyone does, because they do have some of the best nibs that have ever been produced by a pen company. They're not often they're relatively firm, but their Feather Touch series, their the Feather Touches they're delightful. I think this is a lifetime nib, but I love seeing Feather Touch nibs because they are also a little flexible. I think they were making them at a time when they didn't want to spend a lot of money on a gold nib, so they made it a little thinner than they normally would, and consequently they're flexible. Here's another Waterman. I think this one is just rigid rather than a accountant nib. Seems pretty rigid. What does this one say? Get my focusing device. Accountant. This time account is written under the 14K. And this accountant was doing the books for the mob and was quite nervous, it looks like. Okay, what's this? Another really fine Schaefer. I have a soft spot for really fine pens. I used to, before I got into fountain pens, I was interested, I would draw with rapidograph technical pens, and the finer the better in my book. And I would do these very detailed drawings, usually of ships and ocean liners and stuff, using them. And there's, even though I've learned now to hate, for all sorts of good reasons, rapidograph pens, I do still have a soft spot in my heart for a pen that is very fine. This one, as you can see, is fine, but you press down, and it takes a lot of pressure to make that shading happen. It goes from 0 to 0.1. This was a Doric that I got on eBay. It was one of the piston kind. It was missing its lever, and it was part of a lot. I didn't actually seek this one out, but it was there. And I got it, and it too has a beautiful, prickly fine nib. Not as prickly fine as the one I just showed. Well, it can be if I don't apply pressure. I had someone here yesterday, or a couple days ago, that was here from the Boston Pen People group, and she hadn't seen my collection, so I showed her my collection, and I showed about 10 people my collection who hadn't seen it before, and I let them know that this was in their future. Not the fact that they were going to have as my collection, but if they continue liking pens, they're going to continue buying them, and soon they're going to have 3,000 of them, unless they have self-restraint, which I don't have. Anyway, she was looking for a very fine pointed pen, and I said, well, I've got some. And we tried out some of these. this one included. And she thought they were a little scratchy, and there was another one that was equally fine that was not as scratchy. So scratchiness can sometimes be fixed not by sanding your nib down, but sometimes the way the nib is set, it might cause a little bit of that to happen on the tines. So you just look at it under your microscope and you just sort of tweak the thing, and you should get the 2 points together. But removing any iridium from the end of the point, or sanding, here's a close-up of the point of this pen, any fine nib pen. And this little tiny bit of iridium is going to be kind of sharp. So when they sand it to make it smoother, they remove this much. So now you have, rather than that hitting the page, you have something like this hitting the page. So there's more surface area of the ball hitting the page, which will make a fatter line. This line might be this fat. This line might end up being twice as fat. And twice times 0.0000 whatever isn't going to be that noticeable. It's still going to be fine, but it's not going to be as fine. What else can I say about fine? I'm almost done with my drawer here. There's 2 left. What do we have here? This is a Pencraft pen, I think. What kind of nib do we have in it? It's another Waterman, I bet. Another Waterman accountant. Oh, wow. This nib wants to stay together. It does not want to spread its legs for nothing. Is that what I said? Did I say legs? It's tines. But you know what I meant. It's very, very, very stiff. This might be an accountant nib. Let's take a look. Waterman account. Now you can see, does it appear that those tines are on the level? Here I'm just rotating that made it worse. It seemed like the nibs were like that, the tines were like that. I mean, you can see they're crisscrossed. So how do we fix that? Don't try this at home. Do they stay in their natural state? Are they together now? My hands used to be clean. Yeah, they're together there. This is not in a Waterman pen, so the it may be sort of bending the metal a bit. Why is it in this pen rather than a Waterman pen? I'm not really sure. Who knows when maybe I bought this pen that had this nib in it already. I don't remember. So, yeah, it's okay. It was just put in kind of crooked. One last pen. Must be another accountant nib. I have more accountant nibs than I need, so if one of you people want to buy a pen with an accountant nib, I might be able to say goodbye to one of these. See, this one seems... Maybe this one just was used the other day and I forgot about it. I like pens that where I can... You can do this with any pen. You can flip a pen upside down and you'll get a thinner line almost automatically. And sometimes they're very scratchy when you do that, and when you press down, of course, you're causing the nib, the tines to go together, push together rather than to splay apart. So you can't press down on the upside down version. This must be an accountant nib. I'll take a look in a minute, but this one is really very fun when you flip it over. Some nibs are a little bit stingy with their ink flow when you flip them upside down, but this one seems to be fine. They're all so different, these nibs. Okay, accountant nib on this one. Rigid. I would also call this even rigid. Waterman's genetic makeup is that their flexible gene pool, their flexible trait was always a dominant trait. So even when they tried to make a rigid pen, they made it flexible. Anyway, this was fun. Did you enjoy today's visit? Accountant Nibs. Bye.